speaking of change, you know, we've all heard about the Omni-Channel, and perhaps that's been one of the biggest impacts to us over the last couple years. And some of us have been able to master it, others have not been able to, but we're pleased to have Ken Koenemann here, who leads TBM supply chain technology practices, where he works with numerous large footprint global clients to improve execution, reduce the overall cost to serve and accelerate value creation. He has an excellent background in really understanding the business landscape and how change needs to be adopted and how emerging technologies can really capture real business value. Ken?
Thank you. We're on? Thanks. Good morning. Dave, I like the vision you painted this morning about your service person getting the notification, letting you know when they're going to be there. Can you actually go talk to my cable company? Because they can't even hit a 4-hour window, much less a couple of minutes. But look, that's the opportunity that we see in front of us, right? That's what's there. And part of it has to do with all of us as leaders within our organizations driving that change, all right? As I've learned going around to a variety of different companies in my career, in automotive, aerospace, consumer products, electronics, and being able to travel around the world, I've learned a couple of things. One of which is your consultants who promote change are the worst people for making changes to their own processes. I can attest to that in our organization. It'd be very difficult. And your people who are driving change in your organization, if you ask them to do things differently, watch how much they struggle to make that change. But here's what I'd hope to do today, is I'd like to share a couple of points around what I think are some things to be thinking about for profitable fulfillment. And then it would go without saying, if I didn't talk about technology and what's going on in the world today around IoT, distributed order management, crowdsourced transportation, and how it might have an impact on our businesses, is something that I think we all need to be thinking about. But I also think we've got to think about how do we use those to create a better competitive differentiation for your organization. I am not a believer that everything is going to be the right answer and everyone has to be served the same way. I'm old school, I guess. But I'll share you some of that perspective. Look, this is the mindset of a lot of consumers right now. I want it all and I want it now. And oh, by the way, I don't want to pay too much for it, all right? If you look at what's going on in a lot of different industries, and I'll share an example of a client, I never thought for a moment that I would ever see their product on Amazon. It's being sold on Amazon. I'm a huge cyclist. I was at the Generis Manufacturing Conference a couple of weeks ago. I was so excited. Trek was there. It's my bike. It's my bike company. I was excited to see them. They talked about their challenge is Canyon. I don't know if there's any cyclists in the room. Canyon is actually now selling their bikes, which we could not get in the US, online. It's changing the whole dynamic of their industry, where you used to have to go into the bike store, check out the bike, ride it, get a feel for it. But we've now gotten to this mindset of, if I don't like it, I'll just turn around and sell it. Guess what? In Las Vegas, where I live, we have the Las Vegas Bike Exchange. So any of your old parts and your old bikes that you don't like anymore, you can take them and put them online and sell them to somebody else. The world has changed, right? So as you step back and think about these changes, we've all seen this. Look, we've heard the terms B2B, B2C. It is evolving to B2B2C. And that takes on a variety of different perspectives. Not only does it mean that I may be selling to distributors or to big box retailers, to OEMs, I actually could be selling now to an individual specific end user out in the world someplace, right? To get there, this interesting little fact from a study that we looked at, only 65% of customers say that their experience is similar to their Amazon experience, or Alibaba, depending on where you're at in the world, right? the biggest challenge for all of us across the supply chain starts all the way from the very beginning in how we interact and drive that customer experience. I mean, I liked Shane's very simple slide of the digitization. You ordered it, did it get you confirmed? Where's my order at right now? Do we have the stock? How many times have you actually seen a company say they're out of stock? Missed sales opportunity in many cases, right? So we have to take that information. We have to capture point of sale data. We have to bring this data together to come up with insights that we can actually take action on. We then need to leverage that into how we optimize our operations. Where do you put your inventory? How much inventory do you need? Where should it be? Do I have the right amount to service the demand in that location? Where should my footprint be? Where do I have my distribution centers? Where do I have my manufacturing operations? Where are my supply bases? All of this is going to be impacted as we go forward. It's kind of interesting. Last year at this conference, I shared results of a study that we did with Aberdeen around the implications of trade policies. It took a little while for that to come about, but we saw that. It's now hitting us. And it's going to have big implications on all of us in our supply chains. I venture to tell you that, and I agree with a lot of the other speakers, what's happening from this digital world and where we're going is going to change how we operate dramatically. The example that I spoke of, company, a client of ours for many, many years, great company, temperature and pressure gauges, sold through distributors to the oil and gas industry, to OEMs, to aerospace, et cetera. Customized product. Their whole strategy was built on having the ability to create a customized gauge that you wanted as fast and get it to you in 5 days. The whole process was to set off and stave off low-cost product from China through customization, right? 8 million different configurations that they can build. You want a gauge with the connector on the bottom, you can get it. You want it with on the back, left side, right side, top, you name it. Custom print dial prints. Your logo on that dial. But they have standard product that they sold, and they had for many years debated on do they go direct to the user versus going through distributors. 6 months ago, I was on Amazon and I found that. And I went, holy moly. I would have never thought that their product would have been there. That's the type of change that businesses are experiencing and going through. What's driving it? Amazon and their business model. So I ran into this a couple weeks ago. It was a study by Wharton, which is interesting because a week after that, out came a whole different story, which is Amazon and they're not paying taxes. But 2006, Amazon started with 8 fulfillment centers. By 2016, they had 90. And by the end of 18, that number, it says greater than 100. It's going to be close to about 180. You drive around, you see their fulfillment centers popping up everywhere, right? But here's what's very interesting about this. They took a $9.6 billion revenue hit because they now had to ship from locations where they had to charge sales tax. They added $3.3 billion in fixed cost to the business. But it saved them somewhere between 9 and 13 billion in shipping cost. How? Because they took the shipping cost per order down. Totally broke the mindset, from my opinion, because we always thought, hey, we can ship it from anywhere. We can get it there overnight. FedEx, UPS, DHL. It's closer to the source. All right? So that got me thinking about a lot of different things. First of all, this is what we're experiencing. Our customers are driving more complexity into our business, be that from different delivery times, faster delivery times, different channels, ship to points, unique quantities and packaging. If you think about the other thing that Amazon has done, is it has now driven us to a world where we have to ship individual pieces, not necessarily cases or pallets. Remember the good old days? We used to be able to ship pallets. That was many years ago. Number of product configurations. As an ops guy and a manufacturing guy originally, coming up in the Toyota organization, give me less configurations, less products. How many of you I've not heard a manufacturing person yet say, give me more SKUs. They're always arguing to take them away, right? The question becomes is how can I configure this? How can I configure operations to be able to support this type of situation, right? Obviously, all of this has led to complexity in our forecasting of demand, and as we've talked about, where do I put my inventory? What mode of transportation do I use? You've seen a lot of organizations move from LTL to now parcel. You don't have the experience or the people in your organization who've had that experience working with a FedEx or UPS. So these are driving big changes, which are also making it even more complex and harder to understand cost to serve. How many of you believe you truly understand your cost to serve a specific customer in a specific location? Anyone? We make lots of decisions on how we fulfill and set up our operations without fully understanding the true cost to serve. And I actually think that that's one of the biggest challenges for people in us in supply chain and in business, is we really need to get to and understand what that is. There's been lots of changes in fulfillment, going from a warehouse or from manufacturing to a warehouse to a store, to now you're going right to the end user. You don't even stop at the store anymore, right? Standard delivery times to differentiated lead times. A lot of people don't realize this, or when you step back and look at it, Amazon segments us. You are an Amazon Prime customer or not. You are an Amazon Now customer or not. And you pay for it. There's a subscription fee. All right? Daily, weekly order promising with little to no supply pegging. We're getting to a point now where we have to have the ability to do real-time order promising and commit inventory and supply. If you think about ATP, we can't run ATP once a day. We've evolved now to a point in our business cycles where we need to be able to run this continuously throughout the day and to be able to give that customer real-time notification of where they're at. We've talked about the variation in packaging size and the impacts on our operations. You think about in your distribution operations, you used to have people who would go and pick cases. We might pull pallets, then we pulled cases. Now we're down to the point where you have to have all three. I have some customers that want pallets, I have others that want cases, I have others that want eaches. And we have to sort through that and manage through that process, which adds complexity and cost into the business. And then there are things that are happening that are helping this process. I used to abhor ASRS. I thought of them as big monuments that were always breaking down, and you always had to work around them, right? But if you step back and look at some of the technologies that are being used today in distribution operations and what they've done, the impact is significant. One example, many of you know, is the Kiva robots. Everybody know what the Kiva robot is? So Kiva robot is the little robot. It's about so big. Amazon bought this company. And in many of their fulfillment centers today, the Kiva robots actually go to a shelf, pick up the shelf, and bring it to the packer. I think it's brilliant. Why? They took what is the biggest part of time, non-value added or unproductive time in a warehouse operation, out of the equation. That is, someone's going to pick that product. Some percentage of their time is spent walking with no value, right? Or the other one I always look at, fork trucks. A fork truck is half of the time full, half of the time empty. They used robots to address that situation. A valuable point. Forgive me, I did an 80-mile bike ride in the desert over the weekend and suffered a little dehydration in 20-mile-an-hour winds. So look, everybody has an S-curve on different perspectives. So I just wanted to provide some what I thought around some of this technology and what's going on. Look, WMS, TMS, warehouse management systems, transportation management systems, real-time shipment tracking, GPS, RFID, these things are mature, all right? RFID, I realized it was in this mature category when I went to a company that rents high-end linens for big parties. They have an RFID chip in every single table linen that they put out into the marketplace. Why did they do that? One, tracking and understanding their inventory and the turn of that asset is absolutely critical to them. If they don't know where that product is, they have no idea how they're going to fill the orders because they're committing something that is not on the shelf to another customer that's out at another location right now. When they receive it, they run it through a scanner, they know everything's there or not. They know right away if they have all the product or if they need to go back to that customer and get that product back in. When they ship it out, they know everything's there. They are validating and understanding through their process where their asset is and how they can manage it more effectively, right? I called it enlightened. Enlightened to me is, look, it's been around for a little bit, but I think we're finally starting to figure out how to use this to drive improvements in our business. So for example, there's been a lot around optimization engines and using these tools to optimize your inventory, to optimize transportation. That's been around for a little while. Where I think it's going and where I see this really playing a big benefit is in understanding how to optimize pricing and how to understand cost to serve and optimize your cost to serve. How many of you know that Amazon changes their pricing hourly? They change pricing hourly based on their algorithms to optimize. Dell does it with computers. All right? It's an opportunity when they see things selling, it's an opportunity to make a little more. When they see it not moving, it's an opportunity to lower the price and try to get it out so I don't have to obsolete it later. So they're paying attention to the inventory and their pricing and the implication of that on speed or velocity of that product. All right? Control towers and supply chain visibility or analytics. Look, this is a very interesting space because it does get into the challenge, as was talked about earlier, around leading and lagging indicators. How do I understand when my supply chain is about to go out of control? How many of you actually can see order status from your supply base? That's not a capability that exists in a lot of places today. That is an opportunity for everyone to get more tightly linked. If you think about the analytics, prescriptive, predictive, et cetera, and what's going on with machine learning and AI right now, tremendous opportunities. But we also have to think about where is it the right place to use and what is the value. I read a study a couple weeks ago around this topic where they studied demand forecasting. And would machine learning be able to do a better job of forecasting? And they compared it to a lot of different methods. All right? The end result was they had a 2% improvement in mean absolute error. They went from 20% error to 18. The 20% error was generated by multiple linear regression, which has been around for ages. So you have to ask yourself that question. Is it really worth that? Now, I'm not saying that it's bad. To me, it just highlights the point that we need to think about the business value. What is it going to do to drive either revenue in our businesses, or what is it going to do to offset cost? 2% on a multi-billion-dollar business could be a big deal. 2% in a $500 million business, when I have to spend $50,000 to $60,000 on the technology minimum, I've got to make sure I have all my data together, and I know all of us have clean data. All right? Data scientists. Anybody know what a data scientist is making coming out of school right now? $100,000 a year minimum. They're making more than engineers. Actually, I brought this up to somebody the other day. He said, Ken, sounds like a lot of lean Six Sigma guys are going to start calling themselves data scientists. That's a brilliant idea. I love that. I'm now a data scientist, right? Robotic fulfillment systems. All of these are things that we can leverage to go through this. Where I also think there are some cool things coming. How many of you use Uber Eats? Has anybody used Uber Eats? Oh man, my wife loves this thing now. We will order food, I don't have to go out, she doesn't have to go out and get it, they deliver it to us. Just get on the app, don't have to give them cash, it's just beautiful, all right? I also noticed that a couple of weeks ago, on a Sunday, Amazon packages were being delivered by a Lyft driver. That's where this crowdsourced transportation model is coming in. There's always been that talk of the last mile, all right? The last mile to the end user. We're seeing that these companies who started in a different space, which was to disrupt the whole taxi cab industry, they're now going into and starting to leverage that asset for some other service and revenue generating opportunity. So many of these things are changes and driving improvements and things that we have to deal with. And we're going to have to accept it. We're going to have to change, right? The other one is, I think, that's going to be very interesting for all of us, particularly when you get into manufacturing, is augmented reality. If you think about being able to look and have augmented reality help you drive through and what it is your people do as their work, or to give you a picture of the product that they should be picking in the distribution center, that's going to be very powerful. All right? Voice-directed picking has been around for a long time, but if you think about now, Amazon patented a Fitbit device that they believe can actually point the person to the direction that they need to pick the product out of which box. That's the level of complexity that this is getting to. Will it stick? Who knows? I don't know the answer to that. There's a lot of people struggling with some of the privacy issues of that and what they could do with it. But if you think about, again, how do I drive quality? How do I drive accuracy of my picks, of the work that we're doing? There's a lot of different ways we can accomplish that. But I'm going to take you back to where do you apply this and how do you figure out where to apply it? And I'm a firm believer in segmentation. I think Shane said it well in his presentation. You can't be everywhere. You can't do everything. So we need to segment. And segmentation, to me, you have to break it down by a variety of different elements. It can start with channel. It can start with customer. What is the cycle time or service level agreements that you have with those customers? Where are they located? What's the packaging configuration? What's the order velocity or SKU velocity, which is tended to be the traditional way that people have segmented? What's the process capability that we have, all right? Why is this important? Because you can't be everywhere. You can't try these things across the board. You want to pilot them, test, put your toe in the water, shall we say, where we can go apply it. I believe that this is a good way to step back and look at this, and we've been using it successfully with a lot of my different clients to make that happen. Here's an example. So you can see on the left-hand side the different types of channels and customer groupings. Across the top, you can see the customer value criteria as it regards to engagement. Do we want them to be able to go online by themselves? Do we want to manage it? Is it going to go through retailers? What kind of technological features do we need? What's our delivery lead times, et cetera? All of this is leading to, probably many of you have heard this concept of value chains, right? Different segments, different groupings that are going to require different capabilities, different service level agreements, different inventory stocking policies, et cetera. So this was a very simple way, well, I say simple, but it really gets to thinking about how you're going to set up your operations, how you're going to set up your fulfillment activities, even getting down to the specifics of how you might actually produce the product. So a high volume product, put it on a dedicated line. Fill up capacity of that machine. What do you want to focus on? You focus on the speed. If you have a significant number of low volume items, then put them on a machine and focus on changeover time. That's the kind of decisions that we're talking about making through this process of segmentation, all right? And what are you trying to understand with each? This is not by any means all of it, but it's around what's the revenue, what's the profitability, what's my inventory investment, what's the number of orders or SKUs, the velocity, the volatility of that demand, how frequent does it change, how large does it change? Is the customer ordering 100 every week? They're ordering 100 this week, 500 the next week. What are you trying to get to and understand around service levels? I shared an example. I spent time at American Greetings, the greeting card company. It was a part of our seasonal card business. And the seasonal card business was all about shipping out all the cards that you possibly can for the holiday. Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, et cetera. The whole goal is what we called sell-through. What percentage of the product that we put into the store on the shelf, what percent did it sold? The average was about 50%. The other 50% got trashed at the store. Why? Because it made no sense to try to ship it back. It's paper. Right? We got to the ability to be able to, for 46,000 store locations, be able to forecast a price point and a tone, religious, funny, family-oriented, et cetera, at a 90% accuracy level. We also learned that we could get better sell-through percentage by holding back certain cards at our distribution locations and watching the point of sale data and then shipping out those cards to that locations that were selling those more cards than others. Simple strategy. For each holiday season that we implemented this, we drove 3 to 5% or 3 to 5 points of improvement in sell-through. 1 point of sell-through was worth $1 million of EBITDA. All right? So leveraging the data, thinking about the process, understanding your different segments and your customers are a key to get there to help you set up your operations. So to me, there's a couple of key questions I think we all need to be asking ourselves. And that is, number one, Do I need a differentiated and segmented approach? I think the answer to that is yes, personally. But I think for each of you, you need to think through that for your businesses. What is it going to do? Is it really going to create a competitive advantage? Most of the executives that I'm talking to today, when we talk about analytics, machine learning, AI, et cetera, they ask us two questions. I get asked two questions. What is it doing to drive additional revenue for the business? What is it doing to take cost and improve profitability? If we cannot tie that, any of the things that we're doing and any of this technology to those two things, we will have a hard time convincing those in the senior level to make change. That's what we have to do. I thought Shane put it very well, because I'm a big proponent of this as well. Speak the language of business. As a Lean Six Sigma guy in the past, and watching people in Lean Six Sigma roles, they love to talk about all the tools. They don't talk about what's the business impact. But I think that applies across the board. All right? The other part of this is, do we have the right people with the right skills to leverage these new capabilities? So I ask that you step back, take a good hard look, because, well, look, I had an executive say, I want my machines to talk to me. Well, what do you want them to say? Being the smart aleck that I am. He said, I want them to tell me when they're about to break down. I said, okay, so when they're about to break down, they're going to send you a signal. But is the maintenance people going to be ready to run out there and deal with it? Oh. You got to make sure that you have these processes in place to be able to deal with the speed that's required to support and take advantage of these new capabilities. Right? So I'm going to wrap up with this. I originally was going to show the video, but it kind of drags on. How many of you are X-Files fans? How many of you are watching the new reboot, shall we say? Anybody watching the reboot? So this episode was on, I think it's episode 11, a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or two now. I came home, my wife's like, Ken, you have got to watch this. The whole episode was about technological changes and what's a lot of people's fear about those changes. So it starts out with Scully and Mulder going to a sushi bar, sushi restaurant. There is not a soul in this restaurant. You place your order on a tablet, the food pops out right in front of you. They eat, credit card swipe comes up, stick your credit card in, and ask them to pay. Well, it asks him to give a tip. He says 0 tip. It won't give him his card back. He's looking around. Okay, he goes back around, walks around, goes and opens up the door, looks in the back, expecting to find someone that works at this restaurant. No, it is robots making the sushi and delivering it and moving all the product around. So they leave, Scully gets into a autonomously driven vehicle with no driver. A little emoji, happy face pops up. How are you doing tonight? And she's upset. Eventually, this thing keeps talking to her. She's like, shut up. At that point, smiley face turns to an angry face, and the car takes off at about 80 miles an hour, driving extremely fast, and scares her. Gets home, there's packages that were delivered by drones. So to cut it a little short, a couple of things happen. Mulder goes out, he thinks there's this drone buzzing around his house. He goes out, he's got his baseball bat, he thinks it's a kid messing with him, spying on him, knocks the drone out of the sky. Poof, here comes 2 big black drones. Big things, swoop down, take it, and another one comes in, it's got red eyes, like the Terminator, looking at him. All the while on his cell phone, he keeps getting a message that says, you still have an hour to give a tip for Sushi Rock or whatever sushi bar they went to. And he keeps ignoring it. Next thing you know, there's all these little drones buzzing around his house. chasing them. They go into a factory. The factory starts up by itself. The little Boston Dynamic robots that everybody's seen that looks like a horse are clacking around, running around this place. And you're going, holy cow. At the very end of the episode, you have 5 minutes to leave a tip for Sushi Rock. Toot. Hits the button, everything stops. And it's done. The funny part about that whole episode is they hit on every fear that people have about where we're going and where this could go, right? I don't think we should be afraid of it. I think we need to embrace it. We just have to make sure we understand how it will help us and our businesses drive revenue and become more profitable. So with that, we'll open it up for questions.
No questions.
They all want to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, we got one up here.
Which, by the way, logistically, it's out the glass doors over there.
It doesn't come to us yet. Ken, thank you. And as a fellow Las Vegan, I understand the wind over the weekend. It was brutal.
Yes, it was.
So quick question for you. I focus on procurement. And I'm curious your perspective on everything that you shared today, how that changes procurement's dynamic with our suppliers, and how the Amazon effect might impact what we do, how we negotiate, et cetera.
Wow, we could talk a long time about this, but I think there's a couple pieces, right? I think being able to take data around demand in your shipments and being able to then pass that back to what does that mean without necessarily having to run it through a bill of material or actually create a specific purchase order. How do you provide some of that information to the supplier that they now can start to leverage it to see patterns that help them make better decisions on their operations, number one. Number two is, I think the other part of this, and I think a lot of companies struggle with this, is having alternative packaging quantities. And we always believe that it's going to cost more, but the fact of the matter is there's a cost in the entire supply chain at some point. If I get it in a case, somebody's got to break that case down and get the each, right? So it's a question of where is that cost in the supply chain, and where do you put it is the decision you have to think through. And is it better done at the supplier, or is it better done in your operation? I think, so those are two big ones that come to mind right off bat around that, and there's also tons of other ones, I think, that get to transportation optimization and how you might be able to improve some things around that.
We got time for one more question. It's interesting what Ken is alluding to, and go back to the question is, a lot of us, I give a talk quite often about our push versus the pull supply chain. A lot of us are hung up with our SAPs and Oracles, which are your traditional push supply chains. I call it shove, because it sort of just shoves it into the network. And what we're challenged with what Ken has talked about, in order for us to embrace a lot of these new technologies and really affect the change, we've got to change the way we look at our so-called ERP systems and transform our supply chain into a pull supply chain and integrate customer demand all the way back to our sourcing strategy. And the only way we can do that is embracing a lot of what Ken has spoken about. So great job, Ken. Thank you very much.
Thank you.